Welcome, everyone. It's GleeCon, and your homeboy's here one more time to keep reading to you the book, Warcraft, the movie, the novel, with chapter 19 today. On the last chapter, chapter 18, um, Orgrim, Orgrimmar came and freed Durotan. He left, and also Medivh, um, or not Medivh, Khadgar came and freed Lothar from his cage. So we have the two people out and ready to go, and kind of both fighting from within. Lothar knows Medivh has got to be stopped, and him and Khadgar are working on that side, whereas Durotan and Orgrim know that Gul'dan has to be stopped. So you have these epic forces of evil that are bringing the two armies together that are actually really after the same goal. And from within, you have a small band of heroes on either side of the alliance and the horde. So stay a while and listen as we get closer and closer to the end of this book and movie. She had been running all night with her child strapped to her back, and even she, Draka, daughter of Kelkar, son of Rakish, was exhausted. She had not dared to stop, knowing that Gul'dan's orcs were following her. Had she been an ordinary orc female with an ordinary orc child, they might have looked the other way, but she was the wife of one chieftain, and the mother of another, she was certain of it. Gul'dan had not ordered the destruction of her clan because he was angry. That would not worry her. Anger burned out, refocused. Gul'dan was afraid of the frost wolves, and fear lingered long. He had all but begged them to join his horde, and now that Durotan comprehended the depths of the danger, Gul'dan could not let him live. As soon as Blackhand had come to take her heart away, Durotan was dead. Even if he walked and breathed now, he would not live long, nor would she, nor their child. Orgrim's change of heart had come too late for them both. She wanted to sob, to rail against fate, to hold her baby and die with him at her breast. Draka loved Durotan passionately, but what she felt for this little life was as an inferno to a cook fire. She would live for him, she would die for him. Draka could go no further. She was too weary, and they were not far behind. When her flight took her to a stream with nowhere else to run, she made a decision. The water caught the light of the new sun, sparkling brightly, bringing tears to her eyes. Spirit of water, Draka said, panting, I can bear my child no further. They will never stop hunting us. They will find us and kill us if he stays with me. Will you take my baby? Will you keep him safe? Draka was no shaman. The spirits did not speak to her as they did to Drekthar, but she could hear the murmur of the water, and as she watched, a fish leaped and fell back into its depths. Her heart suddenly stopped aching, and quickly she removed the carrying basket from her back and waded into the stream. She kissed the soft green cheek, gently tasting the salt of her own tears, and placed the basket into water. Draka tucked the blanket around him tenderly, a white square of cloth embroidered with the Frostwolf emblem. Perhaps some human will remember, she thought, that the Frostwolves tried to help them, that we died because of that choice. All but you, my precious Goel. Water filled her eyes. Water, the element of love. Love for a mate, love for a child, love for a clan. Love for a dream of something better in the midst of darkness and dust and despair. The baby seemed confused and raised his tiny, soft green arms to her. She caught one of the little fists and held it. Remember, Draka told him, you are the son of Durotan and Draka, an unbroken line of chieftains. And then, her heart breaking for the 1,000th time in a handful of hours, she sent him on his way. Water, she said, keep my baby safe. A roar caused her to turn. A bleeding hollow orc emerged from the forest, but his eyes were not on her. He was looking at the baby. He snatched up the knife Draka had left on the bank and raced down to go after him, but Draka was there. He had her dagger, but that did not mean she was unarmed. She hurled herself upon the would-be killer of her child, driven by love and devoid of fear, seizing his flesh with her nails, carving out chunks with them, and like a frostwolf herself, opening her jaw as wide as she could and burying her teeth in his throat. He went down, startled. Stupid to think a frostwolf without a weapon was a frostwolf without defense. His tainted green blood, acrid as ashes, spurted into her mouth even as a horrible cold-hot pain sliced through her. He had plunged her own dagger into her gut. All the strength left Draka's body as she collapsed atop her fallen enemy. She was dying, but she was at peace. As her life bled onto the sand, she remembered the words she had said to Duraton when she had returned from her exile. When all is done, when the sun of my life sets, I would see it do so here in Frostfire Ridge. She would not die on Frostfire Ridge. She was dying here, now in an alien land with a husband who would soon join her in death if he did not await her already. The last image that filled her eyes was that of her baby's vessel bobbing on the water, and as her vision darkened, Draka, daughter of Kelkar, son of Rakish, thought she saw the river's gentle waves turn into embracing arms. Water, take my baby. Her eyes closed. Water, take. All the chieftains of the Horde and most of their warriors had gathered outside Gul'dan's tent. They were stunned to see the frost wolf as he marched forward. Duraton wore a wolf pelt over his broad shoulders, the beast's head serving him for a helm. He had already killed 3 guards before they could warn their vile leader, and now the others parted to admit him, regarding him with loathing, arrogance, and curiosity as he tugged the singed banner to the dusty earth in front of the warlock's tent. "I am Duraton, son of Garad, chieftain of the Frostwolf clan," he cried, letting his fury fuel his voice. "And I am here to kill Gul'dan." As he watched them, their postures shifted. The arrogance left them as they realized that he came without a weapon, yet had just challenged the most powerful one of them all to an honor battle. The defiant, insane declaration brought forth Blackhand, at least, from the tent. He looked Duraton up and down. "A ghost cannot invoke Makara," Blackhand declared. "You are chieftain to no clan. Your people are food for worms." Duraton choked back his rage. This orc before him was not the target of it. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, he heard a familiar voice beside him. "Some of us still live, war chief," said Orgrim Doomhammer. Duraton's surprise turned to look at him. Orgrim had destroyed their friendship, but it was not too late for the son of Telkar to rediscover honor. Now at last Gul'dan emerged. His glowing gaze fell upon Duraton, then on Orgrim, and his frown deepened. Duraton barely caught the words the war chief and the warlock exchanged. "Shall I make a quick end of them?" Blackhand offered. "I always thought you were one for tradition, Blackhand," the warlock replied. "Duraton," he said more loudly so that all could hear, "your clan was weak, and you are a traitor. I accept your challenge, if only to personally rip the heart out of your pathetic body." "What of the portal?" Blackhand spoke to Gul'dan, but his gaze was fixed on Duraton. "You must be ready when the incantation begins." The incantation. Duraton did not know much about the details of how the portal would open. Gul'dan had hoarded such knowledge, but if Duraton could survive long enough, perhaps his death could at least aid the humans who had been so willing to trust him. "This won't take long." Gul'dan's thick green lips curved around his yellow tusks in a cruel, savoring smile. He handed his staff to Blackhand and reached for his cloak. He pulled out the sharp pin that served for a clasp, and the cloak fell to the ground. Everyone present stared. Gul'dan had always appeared to Duraton stooped and old with a white beard and seamed face, but as the cloak fell away from his frame, leaving his torso bare in the growing morning light, it revealed a physique that made Blackhand look like a child. Muscles strained against the taut green skin of an orc who looked, as Grom Hellscream had said, as if he had the strength of 5. But that was not what had Duraton and all the others gaping in shocked silence. Duraton remembered when Gul'dan had come to the Frostwolves for the first time. He had worn this same cloak then. At the time, Duraton had been confused, unable to determine how the spines with the tiny skulls fixed atop them had been sewn into the fabric. Now he understood. The spines had not been attached to the cloak, they were protruding through it. They and their macabre decorations were growing from Gul'dan's body. Gul'dan basked in the awe and horror his appearance inspired, and Duraton knew with a sick feeling that the felled, distorted monstrosity in front of him was more than likely right. This would not take long. But Duraton resolved to make Gul'dan's inevitable victory dearly bought. He stepped forward into the ring, shrugging off his own wolf fur cloak and letting it slip to the ground. He stood calculating, waiting, letting Gul'dan circle him. And with a bellow, he sprang. Moros was dead. A withered, papery husk, sucked dry like the remnants of an insect when the spider has gorged. So poised and dignified in life, he now sprawled legs akimbo in front of a font gone sickly green which bubbled and emitted evil wisps of misty fell. Lothar lifted his gaze from the dead Castellan to the upper platform. He was both relieved and aghast to see his old friend standing there. He could not see the guardian's face, but his form was unnaturally erect, and his arms were held up to the sky. Lothar caught the young mage's eye. Khadgar nodded, moving slowly to the left toward the scaffolding that supported the golem Medivh had been working on when they had first arrived. Lothar stepped to the right. With luck, they could pin the guardian between them. And do what? His sad, sick soul asked. Something. Anything, his mind replied. He had thought he would be angry, but instead he was more sorrowful than anything else. Medivh, he called calmly, carefully. Now Medivh lifted his head, and horror spurted through Lothar. His face was still recognizable, but only barely. It was covered with lines that were like cracks in marble. His beard had been replaced by a line of small, downward-jutting horns, and the guardian's eyes were pitch black. Casually, Medivh raised his arm. Energy pulsed, and Lothar was seized by the shape of a huge, sickly yellow hand and lifted into the air. The guardian's eyes flared like a small eruption of green magma, and the magical hand tightened. Lothar's breastplate began to crumple, as if he were a toy soldier squeezed too hard by a bored child. From below and behind, Khadgar hurled a blast of energy at Medivh's back. Without even turning, Medivh countered the spell with his right hand, turning the blue missile back on its sender. He released his grip on Lothar, letting his old friend drop and turning his attention to Khadgar, but Khadgar wasn't there. Lothar lay still where he had fallen, feigning death for a long, tense moment. Then Medivh began to chant. He had listened to the Guardian's summoning spells for years, but he had never heard anything like this. It made his throat turn dry, his skin crawl, and he would have known without being told that what was being spoken was the darkest evil that could be imagined. Lothar used Medivh's distraction to crawl to Khadgar in the mage's hiding place, beneath the golem's thick clay body. Khadgar looked pale. It's the incantation to the Orc homeworld. He's opening the portal. We need to shut him up. The mage nodded, then froze. Lothar strained to listen. Medivh, no doubt having realized that the dead Lothar was no longer where he had been dropped, was moving overhead looking for them. Ideas, hissed Lothar. Khadgar licked his lips, then leaped to his feet, shouting an incantation. Blue orbs of cracking fire exploded from his fingertips in the direction of the chanting. Chunks of stone were blasted from the pillars, toppling down in a dusty pile. But Medivh was nowhere to be seen. Very impressive, and the voice seemed to come from everywhere. Now try shutting him up. A green glow came from directly above them. The chanting had resumed, but the voice was no longer coming from the Guardian. It issued from the featureless clay face that now sported eyes of emerald fire and had a green slash of a mouth. Well, Lothar quipped, that went well. Not content with simply being a vessel for Medivh's unholy chanting, the golem began to move, shrugging its gargantuan shoulders as if waking up. Pieces of scaffolding and various tools toppled to the floor. Do something, Lothar shouted. Khadgar gave him a look that said plainly, what do you expect me to do? Fine, Lothar muttered. I'll handle him. You take care of Medivh. Khadgar swallowed, nodded, and started to scramble up the golem's scaffolding. The golem straightened, infused with strength, shattering the remnants of his scaffolding like a prisoner casting off shackles. Khadgar leaped upward to the circular platform just in time. Hey! Lothar called, trying to draw its attention. Over here, Clayface! He hurled a carving tool at its lumpy brown head. Faster than Lothar had anticipated from something so gargantuan, it turned its head and fixed its sickly green gaze on him. Then it lunged, lurching forward like a great ape. Its left fist slammed down. Lothar leaped away, tumbling to the floor as the creature struck where he had been seconds earlier. It followed up with a second swipe, dragging its right fist through the sickly green magic of the font. The hand emerged, dripping, glowing, and no longer clay, but solid black stone. This time, when the golem punched down, the stone fist smashed right through the floor, and Lothar tumbled down to the next story below. Khadgar, meanwhile, fired a bolt at Medivh, but the Guardian deflected it, warping it so that it plunged into the pool of fel. He began to bombard the younger mage with missiles, fireballs, and bolts. Khadgar somehow managed to block them, trying to get them to ricochet back to Medivh, but instead of returning to their sender, the magical attacks were caught by the power of the fel and began to whirl around the tainted font in a blur. Seemingly without effort, Medivh stepped up his offense. Khadgar summoned all his magical energy, gathered up the whirling wisps orbiting the pool, and hurled the accumulation at Medivh. The last second, the Guardian dove for cover as everything around him shattered. All was quiet. Khadgar managed to slowly, carefully, Khadgar moved toward where Medivh had hidden. There was nothing there. The Guardian was gone. All right, so we've kind of like got the first half of the finale battle, which is Duratan versus Gul'dan and Lothar and Khadgar, or I guess Duratan and Orgrim, and the heroes we talked about at the top of the episode, and Khadgar and Lothar versus Medivh. But what's going to happen? Medivh has now disappeared. And Medivh and Gul'dan are both working toward that portal opening. And as a not a minor aside, a crappy aside, Draka died. Slightly differently than the way things happened in, real lore, in which Draka and Duratan died together. This didn't happen, which is a bummer. And Thrall is sent down the river, Moses style, as opposed to just kind of being buried underneath corpses in the snow. All right, we're going to continue seeing how this finale ends up on tomorrow's episode. Check out the episode that we do a little bit later today, very shortly. By the time you watch this, I'll probably already be making it for the beginning of a new side content on my channel that is not Warcraft related. See you guys on the next episode. This one's in the pipe 5x5.